What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB. It has been a few months since we have done updated rankings for Dynasty Fantasy Football, really for all of the positions. So I figured we would go through all of those again this week and maybe even a little bit into next week. But we're going to be starting with the quarterback position. You guys clicked on the video, you know what it is. We're going to be including the 2024 rookie class in this video as well. That way you guys can see how I am valuing these rookies in comparison to players that are already in the NFL before we know the landing spots. So with that being said, let's hop right into today's video and let's start talking about these quarterback tiers. So as you guys can see, we got the tier list pulled up on the screen. We got all 6 of these tiers here going from the S tier all the way to the F tier. But I figured for today's video, we'll work our way from the bottom all the way to the top, starting in the F tier. So right now, the final quarterback to make the cut in the top 24 for me is going to be Will Levis. We look at what Will Levis was able to put together in 2023, 8 touchdowns and 4 interceptions for the rookie. Obviously, he had the draft day slide. A lot of things didn't go well for Will Levis to start off his career, but it looks like going into 2024 with new coach Brian Callahan coming from the Cincinnati Bengals. Now they've signed Calvin Ridley. They signed Tony Pollard. It looks like they're going to have a little bit of a better offense, and hopefully we'll be able to kind of at least give Will Levis a chance to succeed at the NFL level. I think the jury is still out on Will Levis, but for me right now, sitting as my QB 24 in these rankings in the F tier, still a guy that I think we can put on our rosters as a low-end quarterback too, and still see what we can get out of Will Levis going forward into the 2024 season. Now moving on to the next quarterback, the quarterback we're going to be talking about is going to be Deshaun Watson. I have Deshaun Watson right now as my quarterback 23, still sitting here in this F tier, and Deshaun Watson is kind of a curious case, I think, to say the least. This is a guy who is very elite for fantasy football teams, and obviously all of the off the field things happen. He goes to Cleveland, and he hasn't really been able to put it together since he has went to the Cleveland Browns, but he's also been injured pretty much the entire time that he's been there. He hasn't played an entire season with the Cleveland Browns yet, and this is a team that is probably going to be extending head coach Kevin Stefanski. There's probably going to be some consistency there in the coaching room moving forward. We also know what the quarterback position is being paid in Cleveland. This is a fully guaranteed contract for Deshaun Watson. I don't expect them to be moving on from him, or at least have the financial flexibility to move on from him anytime soon. And this is also a team that traded for Jerry Jeudy this offseason. So now he is going to go into the 2024 season with Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore, David Njoku, Nick Chubb. This is a team that has a decently talented offense. I think Deshaun Watson hopefully can bounce back to form. And although I don't know if bouncing back is necessarily going to mean that he's going to give you top 12 numbers moving forward, I do think that this is a guy we can still rely on as a QB2 in our lineups. And if he does bounce back to that top 12 numbers, that is going to be a value at where he is currently being drafted in startups and where he is being valued in trade rooms right now, because Deshaun Watson has basically been written off up to this point. I still think there's a little bit of hope, but it is going to be now or never in 2024 for Deshaun Watson. Now, still remaining in that F tier, we are going to be talking about Baker Mayfield for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Baker Mayfield had a resurgence type of year in 2023, 4,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and was able to beat the Philadelphia Eagles in the playoffs, winning them a playoff game there for Tampa Bay. And because of those things, he got himself an extension. Baker Mayfield seems to be the quarterback of the future, at least the short-term future for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think there is definitely a lot to like about Baker Mayfield. They were able to re-sign Mike Evans. Chris Godwin is still back. Obviously, Rachaad White coming back as well. And even with those guys already in the room, they're probably going to be looking to add a little bit more to this team as well. The one question mark that I have for Baker Mayfield and why I can't seem to get him any higher, at least up into the next tier of players, is because Dave Canales has left. He is now the head coach of the Carolina Panthers. We know Dave Canales was a big part of the resurgence of Geno Smith, Russell Wilson, of Baker Mayfield. He has helped a lot of quarterbacks be successful at the NFL level. It's going to be interesting to see what happens now that Dave Canales is no longer in Tampa Bay. But Baker Mayfield right now, a very affordable option, a guy that I am definitely comfortable playing as a quarterback too in my lineup, and a guy who I think has some longevity to this, probably 2 to 3 seasons that you can rely on Baker Mayfield here. This is a guy who's going to be ranked as my QB 22 right now in my rankings. And now moving on to the last guy in the F tier. This is my quarterback 21. We are going to be talking about Kirk Cousins, now the quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons, obviously signing a 4-year, $180 million deal this offseason to go play for the Atlanta Falcons. Head coach Raheem Morris, they are going to have a similar kind of Sean McVay type of system there from the LA Rams. Obviously, Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota coming from that LA Rams coaching style as well. And then you have Kirk Cousins, who is going to be playing and throwing the football to Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson out of the backfield. there's a lot to like here. Darnell Mooney added as a free agent as well. I think there's going to be a lot of good things for Kirk Cousins in this offense, but the only reason why I'm ranking him down this low is because of his age. Obviously, he's a little bit older. Also, he is coming off of that Achilles tear. We don't know what it's going to look like for Kirk Cousins. I assume that it's not going to hurt him too much because it's not like he was a rushing quarterback in the first place. This is a guy who is a pocket passer. I think he's going to continue to do so, but that does add some question marks. The age, the injuries, the longevity of Kirk Cousins. I think he's going to be a perfect contending quarterback. If you are a contending team, you need a guy who can give you top 15-ish numbers at the position for cheap. I think Kirk Cousins might be that guy for you, but right now currently sitting as my QB 21 in my rankings. Now that's going to take us to our D tier. We finished the F tier, but coming in as my quarterback 20, it is going to be JJ McCarthy, rookie out of Michigan. We obviously don't know where JJ McCarthy is going to go, but this is a guy who reminds me a lot of Jared Goff. What I see is Jared Goff, especially his early days for the Rams. That's what I see out of JJ McCarthy, and if you are drafting that in your super flex leagues, you're probably going to be okay with the pick, just depending on where you're going to draft him as far as the draft capital goes. Right now, we know that JJ McCarthy is being sought after in the NFL as potentially a top 5 pick. If he gets that type of draft capital in the NFL draft, this is a guy who's probably going to go in that 106 to 108 range of your rookie drafts. People are going to be excited about JJ McCarthy based on the draft capital, especially if he gets a really good landing spot. I think a guy like JJ McCarthy has a lot to work on at the NFL level. He needs to get a little bit more consistent, get a little bit more reps under his belt. But overall, I think a guy who has the potential, I think he has flashes that he shows that potential for you guys, especially when he was at Michigan, obviously leading the Michigan Wolverines to a NCAA championship. I think JJ McCarthy right now, this is where I'm going to have him in my rankings. I'm going to have him at the very last quarterback in this D tier. Now, the next quarterback in this D tier for me is going to be quarterback Bryce Young. And it is a unfortunate fall for Bryce Young so far in the NFL. Obviously, year one did not go the way that we thought it was going to go, but I've talked about it when I talked about Baker Mayfield. Dave Canales is now the new head coach of the Carolina Panthers. They went out this offseason already. They've kind of addressed the offensive line. They're addressing the defensive line. They added a offensive play caller, and they have traded for Deontay Johnson from the Pittsburgh Steelers. It seems like they're trying to get some help for Bryce Young here. I expect him to take a step forward in year two. Whether that is a minor or a major step forward is still up for debate and still to be seen. Even if it's somewhere in the middle, I think we're going to be happy with the improvement of Bryce Young in 2024. But right now, based off of what we've seen in 2023, we have to bump him down these tiers. The number one pick being in the same tier as JJ McCarthy obviously is not going to be something that people are excited about, especially if you spent high draft capital on Bryce Young in 2023. This is a guy who still needs to prove that he can be successful at the next level. The draft capital, obviously, it's holding his value afloat, but it doesn't mean anything to us as far as the future success of Bryce Young. For right now, he's going to be sitting right here, number 19 in my quarterback ranks in this D tier. And now the last quarterback in this D tier as well, coming in quarterback 18, that is going to be Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions. And we think that Jared Goff can potentially get an extension here in Detroit, obviously taking the Lions to a NFC championship game against the San Francisco 49ers last year. We think that Jared Goff has what it takes to continue to lead that Lions team as long as he is being coached by Ben Johnson, who we thought was going to be a head coach going into 2024. Well, he returns to the Detroit Lions. I think he's helped Jared Goff a lot. Jared Goff looks good, and I think he's going to give you those high to mid QB2 numbers. I just don't think that the value for Goff is there, and there's a lot more guys that probably have higher ceilings and higher upside than Jared Goff, and that's probably why he gets pushed down rankings. But as far as a points per game standpoint, I think Jared Goff is safe. He just doesn't hold a lot of upside for you in your Dynasty Fantasy Football leagues. Now moving on to my C tier, where we have Brock Purdy coming in as quarterback 17. And when you look at Brock Purdy's 2023 season, 5th in the NFL in passing yardage with 42,000 yards. You also have him following that up with 31 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. A great year for Brock Purdy. Obviously had the chance to play for a Super Bowl. Didn't get it done against the Kansas City Chiefs, but we know how good Patrick Mahomes is. Brock Purdy, to me, this is a guy who's going to get an extension with the San Francisco 49ers. We know he's going to be the quarterback of the future there. I cannot foresee them not moving forward with Brock Purdy. What he's been able to do as the last pick in the NFL draft to where he is now as a NFL quarterback, it is night and day, has exceeded expectations. And I think anybody that still doubts Brock Purdy as a starting quarterback in the NFL, they're just lying to themselves at this point because Brock Purdy has proved it. This is a guy who I think, because of the offense that he is running, is going to be able to give you those spike weeks where you get QB1 numbers out of him. But I think he's going to be a little bit inconsistent at times because we obviously know that a lot of the offense goes through the run game as well with Christian McCaffrey. So because of those things, for me, Brock Purdy currently, like I said, sitting in this C tier as my quarterback 17 and a guy that I'm definitely comfortable having as my QB2. Now, the next quarterback in this list is going to be QB 16. It is going to be Tua Tagovailoa, and another guy that we also expect to get an extension here for the Miami Dolphins. You look at the offense that he has with Mike McDaniel as the head coach, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, Raheem Mostert, even Jonnu Smith now added in the offseason. They're adding speed, they're adding athleticism around Tua, and what that's doing is creating an offense that is very explosive for Tua. I don't know how talented Tua is, to be honest. I think he is a good, accurate quarterback, but I do think that the numbers of Tua Tagovailoa are being overblown. When you look at what he did last year, it was kind of a tale of two halves for Tua. The first half of the season, he was giving you QB1 numbers. The second half, not so much. I think he's a little bit more in between those. I think the inconsistencies will still be a thing for Tua, and although I do think he is going to get that big extension, my guess is he'll get something similar to what Kirk Cousins got, that 4-year, $180 million. I just think that's kind of the money that Tua is going to get. But due to the offense, due to the age of Tua Tagovailoa, I think this is a guy that is going to be a very safe quarterback too for your fantasy football teams, but a guy that I think is probably not going to be a consistent QB1. So he's going to sit here in the C tier as my quarterback 16. Now moving on to quarterback 15, this is where we have another rookie. We're going to be talking about Drake Maye, quarterback out of UNC. And Drake Maye, to me, this guy has shades of Justin Herbert in his game. Some other people are seeing some inconsistencies in the game. I think they show up at times, but the arm talent speaks for itself. This is a guy who can make pretty much every throw on the field. I think he has a good sense for the defense. He's able to layer throws over the safety, over a linebacker, things like that. I think he's a very good quarterback. To me, it's going to come down to scheme fit when we're trying to project where his ceiling is going to be. But right now, if I had to pick today, Drake Maye or Tua Tagovailoa or Drake Maye and Brock Purdy, I just lean Maye. I think there's more upside with a guy like this. I think the ceiling is going to be higher than those guys that we just mentioned. And even though I think the floor could be lower than the guys that we just talked about, that is a risk that you're going to have to pay with the rookies. But I don't think that it's out of the question for Drake Maye to be remaining in this tier. Like I said, if he gets a good landing spot, has the chance to exceed this tier in the future, depending on where he goes. And now coming in as my QB 14, still remaining in this C tier, it is going to be Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys. And again, we look at that 2023 season, there are very few players who had much better seasons than Dak Prescott from a statistical standpoint. 4,500 yards, 36 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions for Dak Prescott. We know that down the stretch, he was a killer for your Dynasty fantasy football teams, giving you plenty of top 5 finishes at the quarterback position. Obviously, the age of Dak Prescott, although I don't think it's concerning at just 30 years old, I think he still could have 5, 6, 7 more years left for your Dynasty fantasy football teams. But I think the future is uncertain for Dak Prescott. We heard a quote from Jerry Jones recently where maybe they won't be looking at an extension for Dak Prescott. If that is the case, I do think that the future gets a little bit murky. So I do think that we need to bump Dak Prescott down our boards just a tiny bit until we get some more clarity on the future. But from a statistical standpoint, there's very few guys who are able to give you the QB1 numbers that Dak Prescott put together for you in 2023. And I said in a recent video, Dak Prescott is one of my favorite values in startups right now at the quarterback position. That remains true. But Dak Prescott coming in as my QB 14 and the second to last player here in this C tier. And now the final player in the C tier, sitting at the very top as my QB 13. We are going to be talking about rookie quarterback Jayden Daniels. And like I said, sitting at the top of this tier for me, Jayden Daniels obviously having a career year coming out of LSU. 40 passing touchdowns, 10 on the ground, 4,000 yards pretty much in the air, another 1,000 on the ground. This is a dual threat quarterback, a guy that I do fully expect to be the number 2 pick in the NFL draft. I think the Washington Commanders are going to move forward with Jayden Daniels, but obviously this is just speculation. I think Jayden Daniels has the tools that we look for fantasy football quarterbacks. Obviously, if you are playing in 4-point passing touchdown leagues, those rushing touchdowns are going to be worth more than the passing touchdowns. Jayden Daniels can do both. He is not the physical type of prospect that we saw from Anthony Richardson coming into the NFL draft, but I do think he possesses some of the same skill sets that Anthony Richardson has. So I don't think that the hype will be as high as it was with AR, but I do think that Jayden Daniels is going to have similar hype as well. Obviously, you see I have him as my QB 13, a high-end quarterback too in Dynasty Fantasy Football. A risky prospect nonetheless, but also a prospect with an immense ceiling. Somebody I'm definitely willing to gamble on if I'm picking in that 103, 104 range in my rookie draft. Now, all right, we've made it to the top 12 quarterbacks. So these are your QB1s for Dynasty Fantasy Football. We are also in the B tier, and the first player in this B tier for me is going to be Jordan Love of the Green Bay Packers. And let's talk about a surge in the 2023 season. I don't think anybody had Jordan Love looking as good as he did in the 2023 season on their bingo card going into the year. Jordan Love looked fantastic. He got better as the year went on. Obviously, that was expected because he was virtually a rookie as far as playing goes coming into the 2023 season. Yes, he learned many years behind Aaron Rodgers as a starter, but it's different when you get on the football field. That experience has seemed to pay off for Jordan Love. He looks the part. He looks like the future franchise quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. And yes, he's going to have to go out and prove it again in 2024. I think he will. They're going to continue surrounding him with weapons. We know the weapons that they have right now: Jordan Reed, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Dontavion Wicks, Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft. They even go out and get Josh Jacobs for him this year and bring back A.J. Dillon. This is a team that is going to be contending for the NFC North Championship, probably another playoff berth in 2024. And Jordan Love looks the real deal right now, sitting as my QB12, a low-end quarterback one in these Dynasty Fantasy Football rankings. Now, moving on to the quarterback 11. Right now, for me, it is going to be Trevor Lawrence of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And Trevor hasn't really been able to meet the expectations that we had for him coming into the NFL. People said the next Andrew Luck, the next Peyton Manning. Funny enough, there's a quarterback in this class also getting similar comparisons. But Trevor Lawrence last year, 4,000 passing yards, 21 touchdowns, and 14 interceptions. It is unfortunate for Trevor Lawrence because although going into the 2024 season, I still think he is going to be a low-end quarterback one. I think a lot of people are out on Trevor Lawrence, and it doesn't help that he's going to be losing Calvin Ridley, who obviously we had mentioned has gone to the Tennessee Titans to play with Will Levis. Now they have signed Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis is the wide receiver one in this offense. Christian Kirk's still there. Evan Engram's still there. Travis Etienne's still there, obviously. But I think this is going to have to be the year that Trevor Lawrence shows us that he is going to be a QB1 for fantasy. If he doesn't, I think he is virtually going to be left for dead in the Dynasty Fantasy Football community. He probably will drop out of this tier if he doesn't prove that to us this year. But Trevor Lawrence, a lot on the line. Currently still my QB 11, a risky quarterback to invest in, I think, this year if you were to, but still a quarterback who should still be able to put it together. All of the intangibles are there, a guy with very high upside. We just need to see it come to life, but like I said, it is now or never for Trevor Lawrence, currently my QB 11. Now, moving on to the top 10, right here as QB 10, we are going to have Anthony Richardson of the Indianapolis Colts, and I know Anthony Richardson only played in 2.5-ish games in 2023. He dealt with a shoulder injury, some other injuries as well. Obviously, we didn't get to see the full year from Anthony Richardson, but in the very mini sample size that we saw from Anthony Richardson, he averaged more fantasy points per game than CJ Stroud. And yes, I know, very, very small sample size, but it is clear that Anthony Richardson is a true dual threat quarterback. The rushing upside is incredible. The offense is going to be great under Shane Steichen. Obviously, they're bringing back Michael Pittman Jr. Josh Downs is still there, and this is a team that could add another wide receiver in the NFL draft. Jonathan Taylor obviously re-signed to an extension as well. I love this Colts offense. I love Anthony Richardson. It may be a little bit of a slow burn coming back from this shoulder injury. We have seen that kind of impact guys coming into their next season, but there are very few quarterbacks that have potential to be the quarterback one on the year. I think Anthony Richardson does have the skill set where he could have that type of upside. To me, he is a top 10 quarterback in dynasty startups and a top 10 quarterback for me in my Dynasty Fantasy Football rankings. Now, coming in at my quarterback 9, that is where we're going to have another rookie quarterback here, and it is going to be Caleb Williams out of USC. We fully expect Caleb Williams to be the number 1 pick. This is a guy who is getting comparisons to Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray, some of these other elite fantasy football quarterbacks that we've had in the NFL. Also elite NFL quarterbacks, to say the least, as well. Talking about Patrick Mahomes, obviously. But when you look at what Caleb Williams is going to be walking into as a rookie, it's hard to find many rookies that have been able to walk into better situations. Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears. I know I'm a Vikings fan. Applause to you guys. You guys have done a great job getting it together for Caleb Williams. He's going to be walking in with weapons like DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Cole Kmet, DeAndre Swift, Roschon Johnson, a better offensive line. Hopefully, they even have the number 9 pick in the NFL draft. I've seen them get mocked. Romo Dunze. Could you imagine if that were to happen for Caleb Williams? He would be playing with one of the best offenses in the NFL. And yes, I may be getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I think this is going to be the best rookie quarterback that Chicago has ever seen. We obviously know that maybe it's not the highest of bars. Sorry, Chicago fans. I know I just complimented you. But also, Mitch Trubisky is your passing yardage leader for rookie quarterbacks. I think Caleb Williams can break that in about 9 games. I really do think that that's going to happen for Caleb Williams. A guy that I am comfortable taking in the back end of the first round of startups, early second round of startups. I think he truly is going to be a game breaker, a quarterback that I have in a tier of his own in the rookies this year in the 2024 class. Very high on Caleb Williams, currently sitting as my QB9 in Dynasty Fantasy Football. And now the last player here in this B tier, sitting at the very top, it is going to be Kyler Murray of the Arizona Cardinals. And yes, Kyler Murray dealt with an ACL injury coming out of the 2022 season. It obviously hindered him in 2023. He missed about the first half of the season. And then the second half of the season, it took him a little bit of time to get going back into game shape. But there are very few players that can average more fantasy points per game when healthy than Kyler Murray can. He is an elite difference maker for your Dynasty Fantasy Football teams. And honestly, he's being drafted later than I would say most of these guys in this tier with him. Maybe I'm high on Kyler Murray, but this is a guy that I love in Dynasty Fantasy Football and I think is going to benefit from the NFL draft. Yes, there are teams that are calling about trading up with number 4, but it's hard to imagine that the Arizona Cardinals will not be adding one of these top elite wide receivers in the draft, whether it be Marvin Harrison at number 4 or whether they're trading back and getting Malik Neighbors or Romo Dunze. I think they're going to be adding somebody. Kyler Murray is going to get some more added to this offense. They obviously lost Marquise Hollywood Brown, but the breakout of Trey McBride in 2023 also helps this offense as well. Kyler Murray, elite rushing upside, elite passing upside. I love everything about him. Currently my QB8 in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Now moving on to the A tier, the first quarterback we're going to be talking about here is going to be Justin Herbert of the Los Angeles Chargers. And honestly, it's hard to talk about Justin Herbert at this point because when you're looking across the NFL landscape, there may not be a bigger loser this offseason than what Justin Herbert has had to deal with as far as losing his weapons has went. Obviously, we know Mike Williams was cut by the Los Angeles Chargers, then signs with the New York Jets. Keenan Allen traded to the Chicago Bears. Right now, Justin Herbert is going to be going into the 2024 season with Quentin Johnston as his wide receiver 1, Joshua Palmer as his wide receiver 2. Their tight end is probably going to be Donald Parham because Gerald Everett went to the Chicago Bears. There is so many things about this Chargers offense that is changing. Obviously, new coach Jim Harbaugh is going to be there. Greg Roman coming from the Baltimore Ravens. They want to be run heavy. It's tough to think about Justin Herbert as talented as he is in a run-heavy offense, but we know the talent of Justin Herbert. I cannot bump Justin Herbert down into that B tier. He has to be in this A tier, but this is a quarterback that, yes, the future does not look very good for him. And yes, because of those things, he probably has to be the last quarterback in this A tier, but I cannot bump him down a B tier. Call that sacrilegious, whatever you want to call it. I don't know, man, but I cannot bump Justin Herbert down. Currently sitting as my QB7 in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Now coming in at QB6, let's talk about Baltimore Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson. Lamar wins MVP in 2023. Obviously, a great season for the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson. You look at what he was able to put together statistically. This is a guy who went for 3,678 passing yards. He also put together 24 passing touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He still gets it done with his legs. We've known that about Lamar Jackson. They get Zay Flowers in 2023 to add to this offense, and he even played in the back half of the season without his number 1 receiving option, Mark Andrews. He will be back in 2024. Maybe they're going to address this wide receiver room even more going into that season. They're probably going to be losing Odell Beckham Jr. We don't expect him to be back in Baltimore. But Lamar Jackson right now currently sitting at 27 years old. He is a true difference maker for Dynasty Fantasy Football leagues. Obviously, like I said, in those 4-point passing touchdown leagues, those rushing touchdowns are worth more. Lamar Jackson gets it done on the ground with his legs. And oh yeah, I forgot to mention, they added Derrick Henry, one of the most dominant running backs in the NFL, to this backfield. Think of the RPOs with Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson. It is going to be a dangerous running game there in Baltimore. And then, like I said, Lamar will still get it done with his arm as well, with Zay Flowers, with Mark Andrews, with those guys. I love Lamar Jackson right now. Currently have him as my QB6 in Dynasty Fantasy Football, sitting in this A tier. Now we've done it. We've got into the top 5. Let's talk about QB5 on my list. And right now that is going to be Joe Burrow of the Cincinnati Bengals, and another guy who dealt with a lot of injury in 2023. He obviously was shut down, did not finish the year for the Cincinnati Bengals, But the Cincinnati Bengals this offseason have franchise tagged T. Higgins. They have a top 20 pick in the NFL draft that maybe they could even use to draft a wide receiver like Brian Thomas Jr. if they want to address that wide receiver position and maybe tag and trade T. Higgins, because we know that T. Higgins isn't necessarily happy with the franchise tag right now. And then obviously it doesn't need to be said, but Jamar Chase going to be receiving a massive extension from the Cincinnati Bengals as well. They do lose Tyler Boyd. I don't think it's going to be a huge hit to their offense. They lose Irv Smith Jr. They sign Mike Gesicki. These are pretty lateral moves for the Cincinnati Bengals, but Joe Burrow, when he's on, he's on. This is a guy who wins. This is a guy who's been dominant for Dynasty Fantasy Football leagues. And right now I have him as a top 5 quarterback in my Dynasty Fantasy Football rankings and the second best player here in this A tier. Now moving on to my QB4 in my rankings, I'm not going to lie, this guy, I kind of was debating on whether he should be A tier, whether he should be S tier. I flip-flopped between it back and forth a couple of times. I ended up settling on him here in this A tier at the very top. But for me, that's going to be Jalen Hurts. I do think that there's a very strong debate that he could be an S tier quarterback in these rankings and even as high as quarterback 3 in Dynasty Fantasy Football. But there's a few things that make Jalen Hurts a little bit concerning as we go into the 2024 season. Obviously, from a fantasy points per game standpoint, Jalen Hurts has been dominant as a starter for the Philadelphia Eagles. He has been on par with Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, these guys. He has been so good for Dynasty Fantasy Football. But we know Jason Kelce has retired. He is a big part of that offense. There is also the question mark of what happened to the Philadelphia Eagles down the stretch in the 2023 season. They have a new offensive coordinator in the building, Kellen Moore. What is this going to mean for Jalen Hurts? I'm not necessarily sure. So because of those things, I do think that Jalen Hurts is slightly riskier than the guy that I have above him, which did bump him to my QB4 in my Dynasty rankings, the top of this A tier. But don't get it twisted, Jalen Hurts is still a top 5, top 6 Dynasty startup pick in your Dynasty Fantasy Football drafts, a guy that I am still very high on and a true difference maker at the quarterback position, an elite QB1 for your Dynasty Fantasy Football teams. And now we've done it. We've gotten to the S tier, the top 3 quarterbacks in my Dynasty Fantasy Football rankings. You guys probably know who they are. Coming in as QB3, CJ Stroud. Yes, he had the best rookie quarterback season of all time. We know what CJ Stroud was able to do. He led this Houston Texans team to the playoffs as a rookie. He balled out. He looked great while doing it. You look at what CJ Stroud was able to do as a rookie, 4,100 passing yards, also put together 23 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. Great season from CJ Stroud. Obviously, the weapons are going to be consistent. Tank Dell's going to be there still. Nico Collins going to be there. They bring back Dalton Schultz. And they added Joe Mixon from the Cincinnati Bengals to bolster this run game moving forward as well. It looks like the defense is going to be getting better going into 2024 as well. And they also have some draft picks to add to this team as well. I think CJ Stroud, this is about as safe of a pick as you can get. If you were strictly drafting on future potential of any player in the NFL, CJ Stroud might have an argument for the 101. But obviously, there are guys like Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, spoiler alert, that are going to be better picks for your Dynasty Fantasy Football teams. But CJ Stroud has worked his way up into that conversation and currently my QB3 in the S tier of quarterbacks in my Dynasty Fantasy Football rankings. Now coming in at QB2, we are going to have Patty Mahomes. Yes, Patrick Mahomes, the baby GOAT, some people are calling him. Obviously a guy who's been very dominant to start off his career. It's crazy to me to think about how young he is and how accomplished he is at the NFL level. Patrick Mahomes is a guy that you are going to set and forget at your quarterback position. The only downside is you're going to have to pay the 101 or the 102 in your startups to get it, but he is fully worth that price, especially in your 6-point passing touchdown leagues. I think Patrick Mahomes, we obviously look at the roster. Rashee Rice, he got in a little bit of trouble today. We'll see what happens with Rashee Rice. Right now, we don't have a lot of news on that, but obviously there is going to be some question marks there. But they go get Hollywood Brown. They also have a first-round pick where I have seen them get mocked a wide receiver many times in the first round. Patrick Mahomes, we don't need to talk about him much more. Very dominant player, my QB2 in my rankings. And now the last and final player that we're going to be talking about today is going to be Josh Allen. Josh Allen is my QB1. We talk about the guys that have the dual threat ability. Josh can do it with his legs. He can do it with his arm. And he's probably one of the best at both of those things in the NFL. Josh Allen is one of my favorite players, one of the most dominant players for Dynasty Fantasy Football over the last couple of seasons. There are some question marks about Stephon Diggs this offseason, as I feel like there are question marks about Stephon Diggs every offseason. I do expect Stephon Diggs to be back with the Buffalo Bills in 2024. Obviously, Dalton Kincaid going into year 2. They signed Curtis Samuel. Maybe they use a pick in the NFL draft on a wide receiver as well. James Cook broke out in 2023. This offense was humming down the stretch, a team that looked like they could have competed for an NFL championship if they just had the things go their way. But that's kind of the story for every NFL team. But with that being said, Josh Allen is one of the most dominant, in my opinion, the most dominant fantasy football quarterback in Dynasty Fantasy Football right now. My quarterback one, and the best quarterback asset for your Dynasty Fantasy Football teams. Now, all right, that is all I have for you guys today. If you did enjoy the video, go ahead and hit that like button. It is the best free way to show this channel some support. Also, we have a goal here where we want to reach 1,500 subscribers by the NFL draft. I think we can do it, especially with your help. If you like this content, you want more of this content, hit that subscribe button, help us reach our goal, and we will help you by winning some Dynasty Fantasy Football championships here in the future. And last but not least, make sure to join our Discord. We do have a free Discord linked in the description. We're in there talking Dynasty Fantasy Football strategy, trades, rookies, all of that good stuff. We do have a trade show that just aired yesterday. If you want to go watch it, go watch it. We pulled those directly from the Discord. If you want to help with future episodes, go join that Discord. Like I said, free to join, so no risk in doing that. And with that being said, I will see you guys on the next video where we are going to be talking about the wide receiver position, so tune in for that. But until then, peace out.